Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Hey, I could be talking to nobody, but that's okay. Sooner or later, my encouragement will reach you, or the masses, or may even encourage myself. It's going to be a funny old morning, but today I do have something to say. So, wherever you are, speaking to the real you, the real man, in my car on the way to work. Well, here we are again, another week, a crazy week. I've got a few things to talk about. In New Zealand at the moment, right today, it's actually 3 degrees out there, and it's been a fairly cold but beautiful day to start with. So what's been going on? Well, been putting in some long hours, and I've been quietly over, I don't know, maybe a year now, I've been in the Twitter sphere. And I guess it was about a month ago I started to have these battles with these people. Because I guess if you have a sense of fairness or justice, if you also have a sense of common sense, a lot of what you're seeing and what people are posting is really quite way out there. The idealistic social justice warrior and even the celebrity seem to all have the same, I don't know, you pick it up, the same kind of feel for their kind of how they frame the world and how their lives completely, they absolutely believe in what they say and do. But it to me, it lacks a conviction. It really is a kind of a strange, weird environment. So along the way, I've been trying to support the Trump movement, and right here and now, I'll say it's not that I am completely overawed with Trump, but what I have picked up and what I do see is that America seems to have if America's doing well, then that affects everybody else. You know, a lot of our culture is based around American culture. A lot of what goes on in America seems to filter through, and this is also in the UK. So I want America to do well, and I especially want, and I believe in the Patriot movement. I believe that they are trying to reclaim freedom and liberty to be able to say and do and have the freedom to be an individual. And if you haven't already, I want to encourage you to look again into the reason why Donald Trump is popular. Yes, you'll hear through the media, you know, Orange Man is bad. You keep hearing this over and over, and then you begin to realize that they, in fact, are aligned with the left. They are a movement that is totally against. They want social change, and they want this social change, and this is where I'm going to segue into. They want social change, seemingly secular change that defies history, that defies Christian-based values, where nations that were built, such as New Zealand, were built on Christian values, are completely turned around, so that there is this, I don't know, technocracy, that there is such things as the freedom of children to have sex with adults. I mean, if you boil it down, it's just anti-God. If you were to even have dare I say, a seemingly homophobic rhetoric, suddenly you're deemed a racist. Suddenly the homosexual community, the LGBTQ ABC community, is now almost a race of people. So sexual identity has become a definitive I guess, a definitive group of people. You know, it's just gone bananas. Okay, so whether I believe that homosexuality is correct or wrong or whatever, that's my belief. And I also want to highlight, if you haven't been following, the case for Israel Folau. Now, he's got a very strong case because he's been unfairly vilified. You're probably thinking, how so? He was speaking against homosexuality. The context of it was that he was quoting a Bible verse which encompassed a group of people, liars, fornicators, adulterers, and homosexuals, that the Bible talks about, that he kind of put out a warning. This is what the word says, and also said, but hey, you know, Jesus loves you. So that's his religious right, his religious belief, and he posted it as a citizen, a private citizen. Now he's vilified, and of course he's lost his job, because the narrative is that sport now embraces all so-called genders, you know, embraces women's rugby's big. It's not just a bloke sport, but there's this cultural affiliate that's been permeating everything, where we all have to nod our heads and agree. And now that creep of cultural appropriation has now got to the point where we must accept transgenders, and we have to accept and not discriminate. And I think it's gone too far. I can accept that people have a preference for their sexuality, and that shouldn't be the judge of their character, you know. But when there is an overt representation of a people group that identify as such, and that have to have their own separate criteria, then I go, why is that so? Why do they have special rights? Because Australian Rugby is saying, you know, we want to be inclusive, we don't want to have discrimination, and yet they can't include the religious beliefs of their top player, and they're going to get hurt by this. It is going to affect rugby in a big way. Why? Because cultural change and our social framework today is under assault. The old-fashioned values that we once adhered to are changing, and they are, and what seems to be, and this is where I'm heading, it seems to be that there has been a movement of the younger generation, and you know, the millennial generation, to indoctrinate them with this sense of social justice. I want to say categorically that I believe that social justice has turned a lot of these kids into victims. You know, there is a state of having empathy, and we must all have an awareness and an empathy for others. But when it's weighted on a conditional must, you can't say this, you can't do that. It becomes almost fascism. And I think what it's done is it's created a culture of fairly weak, fairly kind of kids who just can't cope. And this is why the suicide rate is up. Why? Because I want to also mention that along the way of I guess a life restructure through a divorce, I have been attempting to get access to my daughter in a meaningful way. So I went and got a parenting order. In New Zealand, you have to do a course. You've got to go through and spend a bunch of money so that you can, through a lawyer, have access to your children. So you have this definitive access. Well, in my case, there were numerous breaches of access. And there's this grey area, because if the child doesn't want to be with dad for whatever reason, then some reason or other it's really hard to pin down or to enforce. And then you realise there's such a grey area where, in one sense, in my case, I had a family court lawyer assigned to the case, so our kids got representation. That representation meant that whatever I said and did that was reported back either in a negative way had a bearing on whether or not the validation of access was allowed or was provided. So naturally, my ex-partner's lawyer would just throw muck over the fence, just ridiculous stuff. You said this, you said that, you said this, and it was all reported back through a 9-year-old's mind, out of context. And this has been going on for years. How many years? 3 years now. I'm still trying to get it sorted, and it's just become a huge problem. It's become a huge problem, and I highlighted that because if we give our children rights such as adult rights, then we're really failing them as parents. And because we're kind of, if you were to look at the ideology, we're saying they should have rights and they're enforcing it through law. This breaks down trust, and so therefore, as you've seen with, I guess, the American Constitution, if you don't have advocacy, then a minority group can change the law, and that affects everyone. Yeah, it does. So, having said all that, in this Twitter war, I guess, it's been an interesting experience, and it can be quite time consuming, and it can also be quite discouraging. But along the way I met or heard of a guy who is a quadriplegic. Now this is a shout out to AKA Real Dirty. I don't know his first name, and I believe he's a quadriplegic, this guy. I'm not sure of his backstory, but he's working hard at getting the message out there, supporting his country, supporting his president, and supporting the movement that highlights, the need to have these inherent freedom of rights that were originally what the founders of America had deemed. They didn't want the tyranny and oppression of England and its king, and they wanted to create a culture where there wouldn't be massive government, but there would be oversight. The three branches of government would each be having oversight into each other's affairs, and along the way this has all become a huge corruption. So, AKA Real Dirty, if you're listening, a big shout out to you. The other day, a while back, I actually messaged him and said I was thinking about him that morning on the way to work. I was thinking about how difficult it would be to actually lose your, movement in your arms and legs and be bedridden, or have other people move you around and all you could do was move your head. Well, I find this remarkable. This guy, he somehow has found a way to capture news items and he captures the Hannity show, there's Fox News, and he makes these short bites which is easily consumable, and he tweets them out. Now that guy offers a lot of hope for people who, and even our younger people, who are crying out for social justice, who are really saying we're all victims and we need reparation. We're all victims, and we need to be identified, and we need to be looked at this way, and people need to cherish this ridiculous thing that we do, and everyone should have equal rights, and everyone should, this cry of the victim, the social justice. There's justice to be had. It's that we get taxed, right? We get taxed beyond belief. Is there's justice to be had? Fathers in New Zealand, in this nation, I'm paying an exorbitant amount of money to support my children, and yet I can't get equal access. The government wants me to give money to my children. I totally agree with that. Yes. But that money doesn't go into the pockets of my children directly. A lot of that money goes into supporting the lifestyle of the other person. I don't know what food they eat. I don't know how much their mortgage is, or their power bills, or whatever's going on. All I know is I'm just giving them a huge amount of money, assuming that they're going to be looking after my children. You see, it's unweighted and it's unfair. It's unfair. And that justice is justice that I need. But no, people are crying out, because I'm homosexual, you must treat me equally. Okay. I'm bald. People call me all sorts of names, being bald. Fortunately, my wife says I'm a good-looking guy. Well, that's great, But I don't need to iterate the point, because I think you know where I'm going with this, is that, name-calling and bullying can get to a point where it's that bad, but it's part of life. And that what we're doing is protecting, and what somehow in all this protection, we're advocating to insulate them, and we need to grow them up. I was thinking about life, and the other week I posted, which I'm going to talk about in a follow-on series from that, in terms of the older brother mindset, where I was thinking about this victim mindset in relation to that, and I was just thinking how we need to train our kids, and we need ourselves to be trained in the art of war. Because when challenge comes in life, we either fold, or we either we have a fight or flight reaction. A lot of us are hugely intelligent. We weigh it all up, and we choose the safe option. That's human nature. The safe option, the option where if I do, and the funny thing is that we herald those that are heroic, that stand up, Mother Teresa, that defy this comfort and actually get out there and do something. We want to be those kind of people. One, because our purpose in life can be so much more meaningful, other than just sitting around and playing it safe. Yes, you're raising a young family, your interest is going to be in supporting your family and doing the best for them, and that's how it should roll. And I'm not advocating for people to take huge risks and go and blow it all, but what I am saying is that if all the fathers in this nation got together and had a consensus, we could change some of the laws. If people unified and said, we're not going to accept the censorship that Google have, so we're all coming off Google and we're going to create another platform. That's a discussion for later. But what I'm getting at is, if we're playing it safe and we're not fighting this war, then we're going to have social injustice, and we're going to have this crazy left idealism just eking away and destroying what could be great. So I'm coming to an end. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how this is going to come across. I guess in some ways I am a conservative. In many ways I'm a conservative. In many ways you probably say, well, you're a bit radical. Well, in New Zealand, yes, we are blanketed by conservatism in such a way that it's almost, if you speak up, if you speak out, or even if you try to aspire to greater heights, you're a tall poppy. And we do have this common theme here of tall poppy syndrome. We don't want people to succeed, because that means we miss out ourselves. I'm not for that at all, and what I am for is being able to articulate and identify some of the cultural issues that go on in New Zealand and around the world. So, having said all that, I wish you well. Whatever you're doing today, in the following week, This is your host Brent, and looking forward to further conversation. So that's me signing out. Take care, be well.